from Havili was magic. The shift on for Crotty. Boom, far down you go, Quackett Smith. Me, oh my, I have enjoyed that. Yes, boy.
Draft Rugby, the game they play online in heaven.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Draft Rugby Show, the podcast they play in heaven. I'm your host, Nelson, and I have my trusty brother here, Harry. Harry, how you going?
Good, mate. Very good.
And we've got a special pod for you today. We've got Allan Alaalatoa, who you'd know, Wallaby number 896, Brumby number. Mate, what Brumby number are you? Do you know that off by heart?
I think 241, I think.
241, there you go.
Very good.
Mate, test caps, I think you got 55 test caps, 115 for the Brumbies, the 85th captain for the Wallabies, 3 times Brett Robinson Brumbies player of the year awards. They must just hand those out to anyone these days. But how you going, Alan? Good to have you here.
Mate, awesome to be on. Mate, yeah, no, really good. Really good. Boys are gearing up for a good game tomorrow against the Reds. But mate, doing really well.
We're actually in Queensland. It's nice. It's sunny. What's it like down in Canberra? Do you guys just wish you were up here, or is it actually decent down there for once?
Oh, mate, I'd rather play them over here, tell you that much. Yeah, it's actually not too bad. Like, once the sun's out, there's no better place than Canberra. There's a light breeze in the morning. But, yeah, probably a lot cooler than what Brisbane is at the moment.
It's been pretty hot and humid, that's for sure.
The 3 times player of the Brumbies is pretty incredible, mate. I'm just wondering, the only person that can throw shade at you is George Smith. I think he's got 10. Do you cop anything from him about that, or is he too nice a guy?
I don't think I'm at that level to cop anything from him at the moment. I would just say, yeah, mate, you're too far ahead for me. But yeah, that's obviously like a huge honour. You know, like the boys give me a bit of stick about it, saying that you just got to be a good bloke to win that. But yeah, no, it's been awesome.
Yeah, awesome, mate. Look, we'll probably jump into it later. I wish this career was for the Waratahs, mate, not the Brumbies. But look, we'll jump into some of the questions. I think one of the pressing things, obviously, at the moment is like, how are you feeling after your concussion?
Mate, really good. So what I've done so far was I've had a light bike to start off with, and then a intensive bike, a light run, and then an intense run today with a really good lift. You know, so I think like what we've seen now is that you know, World Rugby are, you know, really coming down hard on concussion, and I think from a player's perspective, it's all for our welfare. So that's what we've got to really understand. It's there for us, and not during our career, but more so post career as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for me, like I've had quite a few now. You know, and I think the way that I always address them is making sure that I'm honest with my symptoms, but ticking along the boxes, you know, along the way. You know, so just doing what I can to get back, and if I'm symptom free, then I'm good to go. You know, so that's all the things that I can go off.
It's the framework of concussion and the return to play is obviously constantly changing. Can you give a bit of an idea of what the step-by-step process is for fans listening to the pod in terms of what's actually involved? And then in particular, the last change I find the most confusing, which was looking at the immediate stand down if you've had a past history of concussion within 3, 6, 12 months, whatever it is.
Yeah, so I think before, like, we used to rush this process to try and get back for the next game. It was only a 7-day, you know, process there. And then that used to be like a light bike into a light run and then into a team session and then play, you know. But now they've stretched that over 12 days, you know, so we can really take the first week. You can just be light on in terms of what you do physically, and then kind of hit it pretty hard if you're feeling good the following week, you know. So I think that just gives obviously more time for your brain to recover, and that's probably all the research that you know that they've done in the past in that sense.
Yeah.
And I think a part of me thinks, you know, like now, you know, when you get concussed, you think, oh, I'm missing all next week, you know, instead of trying to think why that's there in the first place. It's there for our welfare, you know, as players, and that's something that we've got to really appreciate.
Yeah, Definitely. I mean, like as a fan of the game, mate, like, we've all got to understand that as well, right? You guys are people. You have families. You got futures, and that's the most important thing here. You're not a product. You're an actual human being, and that's a good thing about having these pods and actually talking about this stuff. But for the people listening, we're talking. You're saying those steps we go through, or you go through before you can return. You're just looking for symptoms, right? So if any symptom pops up, you get any headaches, anything like that, you go back to the start, or how's that working?
Yeah, you would. Yeah, you would
Yeah.
go back to the start, or you probably get a little bit more time off.
Yeah.
So what they see is that if you've had a number of concussions in the short space of time, then they're saying that any light knock it can rock you. So that's why they have brought forward that long stand down period of what you're talking about there, Harry. And
Yeah.
like that's mainly if you've had concussions all close together, to try and give your brain a longer period of time to recover, so that you almost become immune to that
Yeah.
contact and to those tackles. So a couple of one bloke's been on it now at the moment in our squad, and he's actually coming back now the same time as me. So it's like really awesome to see him coming back, and you can kind of almost spend a lot of time thinking about it as well, and which is all a part of the process, like kind of overthinking it. But the way I think about it is being honest with the symptoms, and then gradually progressing and ticking off all the boxes.
I mean, obviously, as you said, it's something you guys actually think about, especially when you're actually going through that process yourself. Does it change how players are approaching the game, or what you sort of doing on the field, or is it just about being honest, working as hard as you can, and it's all about honesty around that?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. Like there's a lot of technique involved, obviously, and I think from my end, like I've had the same one tackling from the same side in the exact same
Yeah.
technique of tackle. So
Okay.
I've come in from the side and I've hit him at hip height. And it's funny that they brought in that rule overseas around tackling below the waist. Because nearly 80% of my concussions have come from waist height tackles. So
Yeah.
I'm going through the process now and talking to our defense coach and around different techniques that I can use just coming from that side. But then there's the other perspective, like that sometimes that's just a game, like the one last weekend, which is unfortunate. So I think every time now, like I approach the game, I don't change the way I play. So it's more about understanding that when I'm ready to come back, I understand that I'm just gonna. There is a chance of something happening, again, just because of the way that I play. So,
Yeah.
But I definitely certainly some players out there will think quite a lot. Like your family perspective comes in, your future comes in. There's so much outside noise that you think about, when you've got a lot of time off, and especially if you have consecutive injuries, and especially around concussions.
Yeah.
So I think mental health there is important as well.
Definitely.
It's obviously a pretty serious topic, but on the flip side of the serious side of it, Nelson and I have come up with a bit of a conspiracy theory for this week as well with your concussion at this particular time. We mentioned at the top of the pod that you've got 115 Brumbies caps, and your coach, Stephen Larkham, has 116. Is there any truth behind the rumours saying that he's purposely stood you down so you can't actually draw a level with him and eventually get him in the 100 club for the Brums?
Nah, but man, I remember we had to go to a promo, and me and him were riding in the same car, and there was just kind of that moment of who's going to take the front seat, Then he had arrived to the car and was like, "Yeah, well, once you get 100 caps, mate, like test caps, you can come sit in the front seat." I was like, fair enough. But yeah, it's been awesome having him back, mate. He's been really good for us.
Yeah, look, I mean, we're all big fans to hear he's back. He's an exciting player in his own, obviously, right, over a long career in the Brumbies in Australia, and it's good to see him back in Australian rugby. I think a question from one of the guys we were chatting to, one of our mates actually, he's saying, what's the main difference as a coach? What sort of coach is he as Bernie compared to Mikaele? What's that sort of main difference between the two of them?
I think the biggest difference is that he's just like a calmer personality.
Yeah.
He's just like, they talk about being cool, calm, and collected. That's Bernie. I think that's probably the experience that he's had over in Munster as well, and the way that he's grown in that head coach role.
Yep.
It's been awesome having him back. Like, he's come in, and I think over the preseason and throughout January, he didn't change much in the program, because what he understood was that it wasn't a broken program.
Yeah.
But in saying that, we didn't win the final. We haven't won Super Rugby, so there were still gaps where we were missing, and that was he spent a lot of his time trying to ID that over November, over December, and when the Wallaby boys came back as well, had those communications and connections there to make sure that where he added his values, is going to be most influential for everyone. And I think that was also him trying to, get respect from the coaches as well, and try and get an understanding of, the way that they've been coaching in the past, not wanting to change too much. So, mate, he's been really good for us.
Can you sort of touch on any of the stuff that maybe he's highlighted, or is it sort of too sensitive stuff to put out there? Like, what stuff can change?
I think it's just different when you have like a past player as a head coach, and one that's lived and breathed. Like, he's a Brumbies legend, and a Wallaby legend as well, and like when he says things, it hits home, like for the boys. He's been talking a lot about staying present and staying in the moment, and having an off switch. So then when you're around the meeting space or walking around HQ, you're just acting like your normal self off the field, but then having that ability to turn that on straight away. And that's probably something that we haven't really nailed in the past. We've always kind of, once you walk in the building, you've been on nearly the whole day, and it's so hard to maintain, So, we're trying to get that understanding now of how that looks, but he's brought that in from the start.
Cool.
Staying present, staying in the moment. And I think when boys just asking questions about the game and how he used to, approach games, that's awesome, coming from his perspective as well.
Yeah. He was obviously your first Brumbies coach. I think he was there 2014 to 2017 before he obviously joined the Wallabies and then went overseas. Are there obvious key differences as a player, particularly in the leadership group, in terms of how he goes about his work, or kind of how he sets up his maybe not his programs, given you said there's not big changes, but maybe how he's looking at the game tactically or anything like that?
Well, I said to him the other day, like when he first came back, I think someone had asked me, I was sitting next to him, like has he changed since when you were first here in 2014? And I was like, mate, to be honest, like, I was just one of the young lads coming through, and you just wanted to get a crack. I hardly had any time talking to him, because that wasn't really my job. It was just, I was getting the feedback from leaders, and now, like, when he's come back, it's actually, for him, it was like, I saw you when you first came, as on a rookie contract, and now you're the captain, so I think that's been the biggest change, like going from having little conversation with him to then now speaking to him nearly every day, and asking him about the program, and where we need to be better, for the following week. But I've always heard that he was quite tough to talk to at the start, and I was like, I don't know what that meant, but he's actually been pretty good, So.
Yeah, right. It's just good to have him back, mate. As a fan perspective, and I'm sure as a player. But look, one of the big things that's come out of recent news as well, that you've signed on until 2027. Did you get temptations to look offshore? Was it the pull of the Lions or in the World Cup, or what kept you here?
Well, for sure there was temptation. There was always I'm always looking at opportunity overseas, and I'm like, my brother's over there in Ireland, in Leinster, and he's been over there in Christchurch, so he's done the move a couple of times, and he couldn't speak highly enough of his journey, but maybe because he's gone to 2 world-class teams, so it's easy for him to say that's all good because he's winning. But his family enjoy it, like being so far away from home. But his wife and the 2 boys are healthy, and I really lent on him when I was thinking about possibly going overseas. But then, like when the opportunity came to stay, because I wasn't sure where I sat here, but then when the opportunity came to stay and to stay for long, then it was always my first preference. One, to be here at the Brums. Like I love Canberra and love the Brumbies, and the first club to give me my opportunity. So, and then from a one eye on the Wallaby level, you got World Cup this year, and then the Lions. Like the Lions tour is something that like you dream of playing. And I did the maths when I first came through, and I was like, man, I don't think I'll be around for that. If I still sticking along, and that's something that, like, as a kid, like who loves rugby, you just dream about being a part of, So like that was huge, and then a home World Cup, like that's unreal as well, mate. So I think to have that option to stay, like it was a no-brainer for me, man.
Yep. You obviously mentioned your brother, who probably most notably for fans of Super Rugby spent a long time over with the Crusaders. You've also got Jack Debb, who's just joined back again this year at the Brumbies camp, and he was over with the Chiefs a couple of years ago. Do you get much, or do you have many discussions with the guys that have been in these really successful Kiwi clubs about how their programs run, what their training looks like, and how it differs from some of the Australian sides?
I think that's the benefit of being Mike's brother. Like, he's been a part of Crusaders. I think he was there and they won 5 titles. So I'm always like I was always calling him and asking him what his program was like. I think it was more so when I became a leader here, and then I just started to try and compare the two and what they did in comparison to what we were doing. And now he's over at Leinster, which is a world-class program and a team. And I'm constantly now asking him about what they're doing, and their approach throughout the day-to-day and their week. So I think that's been huge, man. It's been huge just to I don't like sitting in this bubble here and thinking that everything's sweet, thinking that what we're doing is working. It's always good to have access to people like that. I'm just lucky that he's my brother. So someone that I text every day and that I call for ages. So
we got a couple of scrum questions from some couple of fans of Super Rugby and yourself. First one is from Rev at Rugby Fixation, who does a great podcast of his own as well. But he's asked you, what difference do you find between having either Frost, Neville, or Swain pushing from behind you in a scrum, and how much of a difference does it make in a match when your tight headlock actually changes mid-game as well?
I think the biggest difference, I can only comment on Nev and Frosty because they're packet tight head, but Nev is just your typical tight head lock. Like he's just he loves set piece. He loves scrum. He loves line out, loves more, and just generally brings that energy. So he's just built for set piece. So every time I turn around in the scrum, he's just got his angry face on. He's yelling at me, to get him up for a scrum. And then hits rucks hard. He probably, like, around the field, he's probably not as gifted as Frosty. Like he's an athlete, and he's still young too, and he's been killing it the last 2 rounds for us. So it'd be awesome to see how he goes. He's a bit lighter than Nev in terms of the scrum, but he's strong. So like Nev just locks down that tight head side. So it's awesome to have like a big lock behind you. And I've packed with Frosty the last couple of years too, so he's been awesome as well. When they shift that at half time or after that, like it's at the start I was used to Nev because we packed together for a few years, but then I was trying to work that combination with Frost, and that transition was pretty hard, but mate, we're good now, so like no matter who you had there, other Neville Frost, mate, it's awesome, man, and they both understand like their job. Like the most important person in the scrum is the tight end, and the second most important is the tight end lock.
Yeah, I love it. Like another question we had that was based around that from one of the fans was Nick Wilson. He said he would love to know who your favourite tight head lock that you've had packed behind him, packed behind you over your career is. If there is, I mean, you're just rattling off New South Wales, really, at the moment.
Yeah, who've come down to Canberra. So. Mate, to be honest, like Sam Carter, like he is huge. Like I was with him throughout my whole starting career at Brums, and I had no idea. Like I'm still learning my way at scrum. You know, like I'm getting my head shoved up my ass, like I'm getting popped. But he's so solid behind me, and I didn't actually realize that until he left when he went over to Ireland, and I was like, wow, like I didn't understand how much, like how good it was to have him behind me, you know, and he was probably he's probably been the best between him and Nev. Like they're just big bodies, man, that like genuinely love set piece, you know. So you can't get more than that. Like old school boys, you know.
Yeah, making your job easy.
Old school toughness. That's it. Yeah. Yeah, I don't even have to turn around. Some of the younger lads have to turn around and give them one to get up, you know, instead of worrying about getting on the big screen scoring tries. So.
Yeah. We won't tell Frosh you said that. Look, another thing, like you previously stated you were gutted for Rennes for Rennie, with everything that happened. Obviously, that's been pretty topical in the news. Is there anything that comes to mind as maybe a key change on how he influenced how you play rugby or how you approach or view other teams, or what was that sort of lasting thing from him?
I think the thing with Rennes, mate, he was so optimistic with how he thought about the game. You know, like I remember there was one clip where he was saying, well, we're in our like 22 and we're trying to find a way to exit. And he was just thinking, well, like the cross kick's on. And we were parked in front of our try line. And I was thinking, well, surely you just want to kick it out into the stadium or something, you know?
Yeah,
and then give him a line out. Yeah, he was like, yeah, you can. You probably get pressure from this lock, but there's opportunity. There's just a cross kick, you know, and the winger can catch it and then kick it downfield. And I was thinking, like, there is. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I get it. Like, there is, you know, but like the risk factor is huge, you know. So he's always, I think that was the best thing that he brought in. He just gave us different eyes to the game, you know, and skillfully, like he had a lot of drills that he had at training to make us confident to pull that off, you know, in the game. You know, but yeah, I think that was the best thing. And he was just a really good man off the field, you know, like he was approachable to everyone. I remember when we have meals in camp, like he just gets a plate and sits around different blokes, sits around different tables and generally wants to get to know the individual. And I think that was one of his best traits as well. So.
Awesome. Moving on to, I guess, the different roles that you have between the Brumbies and the Wallabies. As a tight head prop, do you have a similar kind of role in those two teams? Obviously, there's some crossover with the coaches with Dan Mikaele between the two sides, or do your roles differ massively between different sides?
Nah, mate, it's pretty simple, man. Like it's like as a tight end, mate, you just want to dominate scrum and be physical around the park. You know, like that's the basis of the game. You know, so and that's something that was I learned from like Palms, you know, who's been involved in Brums, but also has been involved in the Wallabies as well. So yeah, in terms of both Wallaby and Brums, yeah, like it's just the same game for me. It's just trying to be at my best, but deliver that set piece dominance and then that physicality around the field.
A few people have voiced that I think Dan Palmer's probably the best scrum coach in the world. I think that's what I've been hearing. Is there any chats? Does he turn up around training? Is he giving him a call? Do you know anything about that?
Oh, I asked him, mate. He gave me absolutely nothing. So I was like, he's like, mate, I focused on the Brown. I was like, oh, mate, come on, you're talking to me. You know, talking to a reporter. But But
Great
yeah,
that.
mate. Yeah, if I'm honest, mate, I wouldn't be surprised. Like he is world class, and I think like I've only had really him and another one, and I think I've been really lucky. Like he was a huge reason to why I've stayed at the Browns for a long
Yeah.
period of time. You know, it's because I knew that I was only going to grow and get
Yeah.
better having him around. You know, so he's attention to detail, mate. It's just unreal, and obviously being a tight end prop himself, he knows what it's like to put his head in the space. You know, so
Yeah.
mate, he's been really good. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that did come up.
Yep. Have you, you said before that you've been talking to Eddie Jones a little bit recently. I understand that you probably have to be a bit careful with your answer, so he still wants to pick you. But there's a lot of talk always about Eddie that he's a very intense character. Do you get that sense from him in your early chats, or do you get more of what the Pommy players have been saying, that he's that same very personable bloke that maybe doesn't show the same intensity that he did back in his first stint in Australia?
Yeah, I think I'm getting that vibe that the English players are saying. You know, he's been well, that was like probably my own thoughts I was putting in my head right at the start before I met him. Was like, yeah, but this is going to be pretty full on. I don't know what to expect. You know, and mate, he was just a really good guy. Like he's just really approachable as well.
Yeah.
Like seemed real calm and yeah, I think our first chat, yeah, just wanted to have a joke around and then get to know my family and my upbringing. You know, so that was the pretty much the only chat we've had since then. But yeah, it was just one just to get to know each other. But yeah, I'm sure that he has that other side, which I know he does, which he'll probably bring out
You,
closer to the test.
you just got to stay on his good side, mate. It sounds like he doesn't suffer fools, but he makes fools suffer. You know, like if you're working hard and you're being honest, he seems like the guy that's gonna, give you everything he's got. But if you're shirking on stuff, you probably can get on his wrong side. Do you think that's correct?
Yeah, I think that's correct. But again, mate, I'm gonna have to do it and then wait to see, you know, if given that
Yeah.
opportunity, mate. But yeah, that's the vibe I'm getting.
What about Slips? You're obviously playing with James Slipper at the Brums and the Wallabies. He's been captain in the Wallabies for a little while as well. Can you give us a bit of an insight into his leadership style?
Yeah, he's like one of the hardest players I've played with in terms of toughness on the field. Yeah, the way he leads predominantly is just through his actions. You know, someone who knows what his body needs throughout the week in terms of preparation, and then rips in on game day. You know, and the boys look at that and really look up to people like that. You know, who are authentic. You know, and genuinely care about the person before the player. You know, and that's what Slips has. You know, so I think I've been very lucky to have him at Brahms like over the last few years. I think he moved over in 2019. But like I've always seen him as a leader. You know, I looked up to him when I was coming into Super Rugby. You know, and now to have him here at the Brahms, like I'm constantly like asking him questions on what he thinks on different things. You know, and we kind of just work together in that space. And if he feels like he needs to say something or do something, he just does it. You know, because we have that trust and that connection. You know, and the boys like respect him on that level too, from what he's done and the way that he's led. You know, so I think it's awesome been having him here at Brahms, and like it was no surprise he got the gig with the Wallabies.
Yeah.
You know, he has a lot of respect from everyone in the team, staff included. Mate, he's 100 plus test veteran. You know, so he's been around quite a while. I think this might actually be his fourth World Cup if he goes. I think it is. I'm really showing his age now, but yeah, he's
Pretty young. That's what you say.
yeah, but mate, yeah, like his first year, I'm pretty sure he was straight into Test footy. You know,
Maybe.
so mate, experience is invaluable, mate. So he's awesome.
The last few weeks, he seems to have added a bit of a pilfer and been even more solid over the ball and stuff, getting better and better. But speaking about like between him, yourself, and then you see Tani Alatupo, who's obviously a lot more kind of ball in hand stuff as well. and been building the scrummaging more and more. How do you think fans should be judging tight heads or props in general? Like, do we overemphasize things like big runs, offloads, big hits, that sort of stuff? Is there certain things that you reckon fans need to appreciate more, understand more about that role and how to witness it?
Yeah, mate, it's hard, because like whenever Nella touches the ball, it could be less than what say I do, but mate, his ball carriers are dominant. He's breaking tackles, he's got post contact meters, scoring tries. So in terms of quality effort, mate, he's unreal, mate, and probably something that we haven't had in Australian rugby ever. And he does big shots every now and then. Like a game. So that's awesome for us as well. But and then in terms of the scrum, mate, he's almost like if he wants to turn that on, he can turn it on and get it tighter. No, seriously. And like that's where he's at, in terms of strength and flexibility wise, mate. He's a beast. But yeah, I don't know, like the way that I base my game is pretty much around set piece and then work ethic, So
Stuff.
all the stuff that people don't genuinely see unless you're like a rugby badman, who understands the game. But mate, to be honest, the way that Nella carries, mate, he's a beast, So you want to give him the ball, you want those guys to be touching the ball close to the line because you're going to get a try, So he's unreal, and it's good for him to lock that away now and be here to the lines as well.
I don't know if you can tell, but I'm not a prop and I've never been in a scrum. You mentioned before that there's the big advantage of Dan Palmer being an ex-prop, actually teaching you so many skills through scrummaging. Can you kind of try and describe to someone like myself, and I'll put Nelson with me as well, what's it like being in the front row of an international scrum as an actual experience, and what you feel and what you go through? And then also from your point of view, when you go into that space, is it just push as hard as you can, or is there a lot more tactical effort that's going into it, a lot more mind games? What's the balance of that as well?
Yeah, I think it's like the easiest way to put it is probably like a max squat, but you want to be in the perfect position to deliver that technique, and that's all like the setup, the crouch, the bind, like that sequence there. You want to put yourself in the best position to be able to max squat, which is the set call, which is when you engage. So there's a bit of mind games, there's a bit of a setup, your alignment, you're constantly doing review, but it's purely around knowing what your best setup is and how you're going to try and get that. So you're doing that through the footage first, before you come and step on the field, and then you're looking at the pictures there. There's a few headbutts that go on, and you're sending pressure in different ways. Just in terms of it just depended on who you're going up against, but you want to try and create your own space, so you can have that max lift, so you're coming out of the scrum in your first few seconds, just trying to catch your breath back, because I normally hold my breath for the whole duration of the scrum, just constantly turning everything on, once you switch off for a second, it's enough for a collapsed scrum or for your scrum to go backwards, or for you to get injured, mate. So it's pretty intense.
You're talking about you're picking different angles and maybe pressuring different shoulders, different things like that. I don't know, it's not an analogy I've ever really thought of, but is it kind of like maybe you're a spin bowler and you're trying to make them, lull them into a sense it's coming in a certain way, and then you're changing your angles? Or is it like, this is where the hole is, this is where they're weak, I'm going to keep hitting that thing, driving that thing home? Is it like that sort of in-depth mindset?
Yeah, I think for us, all we want to do is just stay parallel to the sideline. We just want to stay square, because now we see refs they just 50-50 for them, mate. It's a gamble, But if they're seeing us stay parallel to the sideline, then they're probably you're going to get awarded a penalty.
They give a 45-degree angle allowance.
Well, the spider cam doesn't help with my big mate. But yeah, like he's but yeah, but I think it's all. So like when we do the review, like we're asking, well, what's going to pull us out of line? You know, so if we're trying to go straight, what's going to pull us out of line? Who's their strength? Is it their loose head? Is it their tight head? And then we come up with all our we problem solve on the run on what we're going to expect. So then this is where we go with a plan. We'll hit it, and if it's working, we'll just keep hitting it. You know, but we've already problem solved at the start of the week, knowing this may happen or this may happen. If that happens, this is what we're going to do. If this happens, this is what we're going to do. You know, but mate, if the same thing's working from the first scrum, like there's no reason to change that. You know, you just keep hitting that home.
Sure. Yeah. We had a question from Damien Chan asking which country that you've gone up against as the best scrum.
Oh, probably have to be South Africa.
Yeah.
Like, I feel I had to play 80, the one in Sydney, and like, mate, that was probably one of the hardest games physically. Ball in play time, there was not much at all. Like it was probably less than 20 minutes, but there were so many scrums and so many moves, mate. Like they're technically, like they're probably not the best in comparison to like the All Blacks or something, but physically and strength wise, like, they're probably top of the chain there. You know, and that's one of their strengths. It's something that they always go to win them the game or swing momentum, you know.
Yeah. I've got one last question on the scrums. Like we've seen some of these new innovations with the rules in Super Rugby. You've had a couple of weeks of it. You know, you got to get your 30 seconds to get to the scrum. Is that really pushing you guys to get there quick, to set quick? Is it changing your preparation at all?
No, because like we've done that in the past. I think the average last year was probably just below 30. You know, so when we were doing it in the trials and then in round one, and it just felt normal. You know, so as long as it said you didn't have 30, I mean, as long as it didn't say 30 seconds to engage. So from when the call was made, you have to engage in 30 seconds. Then that's probably pushing it a bit in terms of just our safety and making sure that, you know, our technique's right. But it's 30 seconds to get to the mark, which I think is plenty of time to be able to set a good scrum, get the ball out, and everyone's safe. You know, so it's been good feedback so far, and I think a lot of people have said that it's sped up the game, you know, over the first couple of weeks. So that's great feedback.
Yeah, for sure. Thallium on Twitter also asked, do you have any kind of tips, hints, tricks, or just advice you'd give to young tight head props coming through?
I think the way that I always go through is to understand where the pressure's coming from. So if pressure's coming from their tight head or coming from their loose head, you always got to go against it. So to do that for a young tight head, you got to get big and strong. You know, you got to be flexible to get in that position. You know, so constantly keep chipping away in the gym. You know, and get massive there. Work on your flexibility so you can be caught in different positions but be able to work out of them.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's been beneficial for blokes who are a lot more flexible than others.
Yeah. I don't know if you intended to, at the start of this podcast when we were preparing, you pretty much confirmed you think Mike was a better player than you, your brother, Mikaele Alaalatoa.
He's been in great teams. That's all
Oh,
I said.
okay. How much of a rivalry is there between you boys? Is there a rivalry
on and off the field?
Yeah.
Oh, nah, there's not much. Like I remember the very first time we played, it actually felt really weird. Like we had a whole family there, and my mum couldn't watch the game though. So out of everyone that came, my mum was like, "Nah, I'm not watching it."
Yeah.
But we've always grown up. And I've always just looked up to him, you know. So I always go to him for advice. And I used to always, like, when I was younger, try and do things better than him, you know. But when it came to versing him on the stage, it's just a little bit weird. Like, we told each other, like, the night before that, like, our old man was said, like, there's no friends on the field, you know. So once you cross the white line, like, it's on, you know. So he was saying like even like the closer they are to you, the more that you want to hurt them, you know, because that's just you getting their respect, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was getting G'd up, but it was just so we went pretty hard. I ran at him a few times and didn't end up on the and ended up the wrong side of those, but like I wasn't going to take that opportunity. Like I saw him standing right there, so I asked for the ball and I didn't step nothing. He just ran straight at him. But I was worried about the scrum because I was making a lose there, so I was like, nah, I just want to get him here. I just want to get him the set piece. But yeah, at the end of the day, he gets the last laugh because he beat me every time, So I didn't get one win over him.
Well, hopefully you guys get to play Samoa then, and you can have a bit of an advantage there.
Oh, I missed that game too. 2019, his debut. Like I missed that game as well. But that was like awesome to see him debut there. I'm sure the Wallabies hopefully will have a game against Samoa in the next few years.
Yeah, hopefully near future. We've got 4 fan questions to finish off. Thank you for all your time so far. The first one is from @SuperRebels Rugby. He said, "How can fans support players and make them feel comfortable and happy when interacting both in person and online?"
I think it's just about being yourself. Like I think now without COVID, it's been awesome. Like we've been able to go and connect with fans after the game. Like we actually genuinely haven't been able to do that the last few years. I think what we've been doing now, like I think we're allowed, like fans are allowed to come on the field after the game. And that's awesome as well. Like it's just awesome for us to be able to connect with the fans again, because that's something that we want to continue to build, and grow, But yeah, for a fan, if they're asking like what do they need to do when they come up to the player, mate, it's just got to be themselves, and really take the moment. Like if you think should I go or not, take it. Because you never know when you get that opportunity again.
Yep, love it. Yeah, for sure. Another question we had from Mike McGee at Namtrack, and he goes, "What's your nickname? Do you have a nickname?"
Yeah, it's Big Al. But that's
Big Al.
I've had that since school.
We got Big Al's pizzas around from the corner from us, and it is good pizza. So that's a compliment, mate.
Yeah, that's definitely
yeah. Oh, obviously you get the family size.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, it's well publicized. I feel like there was a whole article dedicated to the fact that you love KFC. Nick Wilson,
he got me good now.
Nick Wilson has asked if you're considering a move to the Melbourne Rebels now that they've been announced KFC is a major sponsor for them.
I heard that actually. I heard that the other week, and I asked the boys like what they got, and they said they haven't got anything yet. So I was like, oh, mate, but that would have been unreal because they sponsor Crusaders as well, I think. And Mike said that they only got chicken at the end of the season.
What?
And after some games, but yeah, they used to get a whole truck delivery like after the whole season. So like I was like, oh, geez, that would have been.
Surely everyone gets the family box back in the change room.
I was going to say, if you get post-game KFC, you're saying there's a chance you'd end up in Melbourne.
Mate, if you come to the Taz, I'll buy you the KFC after every match.
Mate, the KFC is perfect. Like everyone there knows me, mate. So it's all good.
Yeah.
Gold Creek.
We got one last question here. I think this is a good one. It's you might know this guy. It's at Matt Tamua. Why didn't he invite me to his wedding?
Oh my days! What's he doing? What's he doing? Even tuning into this?
Mate, he's probably not.
He already knows. He already knows COVID. I don't even want to go into that bloke.
Okay. We'll let him know that it's just because he didn't make a cut. I think that's it from us. Do you got anything else, Harry?
No, that's all of it. We're hoping to get some more dirt from you, but we might have timed out, so you're off the hook. That's the last one.
Yeah, see, I don't want to delve too much into pub, but yeah,
you can throw some shade back. You feel free to throw some shade.
He's all good. I actually went to his wedding. In December, so toured the middle, but that was really good.
Yeah, nice, man. Well, thanks for giving us this time. Really enjoyed the chat. Always do.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see you back on the field next week.
Is that the plan at the moment?
Boys.
Next week, you reckon?
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, we're still waiting for just a few decisions to be made, but that's my plan. So
Good man.
definitely see how that
You're my
goes.
fantasy team, so I'd love to. If you want to give me any insights,
Get back ASAP.
He's a big fan. Just don't pass
that-
the ball. There's no points for passing.
stop passing. Just
But that's why he
Exactly.
was asking if tight end props need to make breaks and make big tackles
yeah, for fantasy they
to
definitely
get
do,
him
mate.
more points.
Yeah. Cheers, mate. Really appreciate it.
Easy, boys.
Have a good rest of the year, mate. Big year ahead.
So.
Thanks, mate. Take care, man. All the best tomorrow.
Cheers, mate. Sat.